I always knew I was adopted. What I didn't know was that one day my biological parents would try to reclaim me in a parking lot. I was wearing a graduation cap and holding flowers my parents bought 4 hours away from home. It was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. I had just walked across the stage, my name announced loud and clear, the name my parents gave me, the only one I've ever answered to. I scanned the crowd and saw my mom wiping her eyes, my dad standing taller than usual, my grandparents beaming with pride. I was the first in my family to earn a 4-year degree, and they had all shown up for me the way they always had. That's when everything changed. I was adopted when I was 3 years old. My biological parents were 19 and 20, young, scared, and honest enough to admit they weren't ready. They signed the papers willingly. No coercion, no tricks, just a choice. And that choice placed me into the arms of two people who had spent years trying to have a child and were finally told yes. My parents never hid my adoption from me. They told me I was chosen. They told me I was wanted. They said my story began the day I came home with them, and I believed them because my life backed it up. Birthday parties, family vacations, bedtime stories, parents in the front row of every school play, every soccer game, every award ceremony, love that never wavered. I never felt like something was missing. When I turned 18, I was given the option to access information about my biological parents. I thought about it, really thought about it, and decided I didn't need to. I already had parents. If my biological parents wanted to find me, I figured they would reach out the right way, and I'd decide then. They never did. Not at 18, not at 19, not at 20. So I moved on until my college graduation. After the ceremony, my family and I gathered in the parking lot to take pictures. That's when a man and a woman in their early 40s approached us. They stood a few feet away, staring at me like they already knew me. The woman had tears in her eyes. She said a name, not mine, a name I hadn't heard since I was 3 years old, the one on my original birth certificate. I didn't respond. She said it again, then told me she was my mother. She said they'd been looking for me for years, that giving me up had been a mistake, that they were ready now, ready to be my parents, ready to make things right. Before I could speak, my mom stepped forward and asked who they were. The woman looked straight at her and said, "I'm her real mother. I'm here to take her back." Like I was an object, like I'd been borrowed. My dad told them to leave. That's when the man, my biological father, lost his temper. He said they had every right to be there, said I was their flesh and blood, said no piece of paper could erase that, said they'd spent 20 years regretting their decision and weren't wasting any more time. He said I belonged with them. I froze. My biological mother kept reaching for my arm, calling me by that old name, talking about all the things we'd catch up on. She said she couldn't wait to show me where I really came from. My mom was shaking. My dad looked ready to physically intervene. My grandparents stood helplessly nearby. My graduation, my moment, had turned into a standoff in a parking lot. I finally found my voice. I told them to stop. I told them I didn't know them. I told them the people standing behind me were my parents, and they needed to leave. That's when my biological mother started crying. She said I was confused, said I'd been brainwashed, said blood was thicker than water and I'd understand that eventually. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. She said they'd been watching me. They said they'd waited to reach out until I was old enough to decide for myself. I looked at them and realized something with perfect clarity. They had already made their decision, and so had I. I told them they gave me up 20 years ago, that I wasn't lost, that I wasn't waiting to be claimed, that I had a family who loved me, raised me, and showed up every single day of my life. I told them they didn't get to rewrite history just because they felt regret. Then I walked away, with my parents on either side of me, exactly where they belonged. Some people believe family is about blood. I believe it's about who stays, and mine did.